Now, if obscurity is a major marketing challenge for your business, then I have a very tailored solution for you. Get yourself on podcasts that have the attention of people you'd love to sell to. Yep, I want you to stick your head above the trench, get noticed, and get interviewed. It's a podcasty episode 582 of the 12-year-old award-winning Small Business Big Marketing podcast.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show, where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Tim Reid.
And welcome back to your weekly dose of Put Yourself in the Spotlight Marketing. I'm your host, Tim Reid, and I have an insatiable curiosity for uncovering marketing strategies and ideas that help businesses just like yours to grow. You, so much more importantly, are a motivated business owner, ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire that it absolutely deserves to be. And that is why this podcast exists. That is why I do what I do. And I can't wait to share some marketing insights with you. As per usual, team, there is marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. If you are a long-time listener of this podcast, you'll have heard me rabbit on time and time again about getting yourself on other people's podcasts. There is so much upside to it. It gets you exposure. It creates noise around your personal and business brands. You might even get some business from it. That's why when Tom Schwab, the owner of Interview Valet, a Michigan-based podcast business employing 35 staff, approached me for an interview, I said, hell yeah. Now, Interview Valet specialises in getting business owners interviews on podcasts. In their words, they turn listeners into leads and leads into customers by helping you tell your story on relevant podcasts. So lean in as we discuss how to avoid marketing obscurity, the power of podcasts as a marketing channel, and the best ways to secure an interview on a relevant podcast. I started off by asking Tom why leveraging other people's platforms is more valuable than leveraging other people's money.
Well, I think today that exposure is what we're all missing, right? Today, money is cheap, right? So if somebody says, hey, I'll loan you $1 million. Well, I'm not going to say no to it, right? But at the cost of money, I could probably get that a lot of places. But say, classic example here, Oprah Winfrey or somebody comes and says, I'll give you $1 million. Or she says, I'll give you 45 minutes on my stage. I'll take that stage time anytime, right? You look at all of the businesses that have launched off that. And really, I believe that our biggest problem today as small business owners is obscurity, right? There are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people that we could serve with our current version, even if it's 1.0, right? But the problem is they don't know we exist. So that obscurity, how do you get known? I believe leveraging other people's audience is the best way to do that.
Interesting. So that's all about I call it amplification, where you can do one-to-one marketing, or you can run ads and you can do all that kind of stuff, and that gives you amplification. But what you're suggesting is finding strategic partners that have audiences or the attention of people that we want to get in front of, and then somehow figure out how you are going to get your message out across their platform.
Tim, you mentioned two important words there. One's amplification, but the other one's attention, right? Because it's not just being louder and trying to break through the noise. If nobody's listening, it doesn't help you if you just keep amplifying it. And I think today, there's so many people that are saying, you're one funnel away, just pay some more for this paid advertisement or whatever it is. And it's like, you'll never be able to outspend whatever the big consumer price good is. And that's the wonderful thing about being a small business is we can do things that they can't do. And that idea of being able to get the amplification to go on somebody's established show, but then also to get the attention.
Yeah.
You think about back in the old days pre-COVID. I mean, how many times would we spend a day, get on an airplane to talk to 100 people or 200 people, to go to a live event? And now to think with podcast interviews, here we are. You're in Australia. I'm in the States, and we're doing it through here. And even if somebody, while we were talking at an event and they went to the restroom and they missed everything that we said, well, it doesn't matter now. With a podcast, they can hear it over time. And what's really magic too is that if I hear something on a podcast and I think, oh, so-and-so needs to hear this, boy, now I can go and introduce it to them. So it's that amplification plus attention.
Yeah, there's a great story, and I don't know the full story. Maybe you do. If not, we'll let people find it themselves. But Brendan Burchard, who is the poor man's Tony Robbins, that's probably unfair to Brendan because he's bloody good. But he, in order to get his start, paid to get on Tony Robbins' stage at an event. And the rest is history. Now Brendan Burchard is one of the, the great motivators, personal development coaches of all time, just behind Robbins. And that's how he did it. So, even the big boys are doing it, Tom.
They are. And even, this last couple of years, they've been doing it more and more online because that's where the audiences are.
So you talk about leveraging other people's platforms and not other people's money. Your preferred platform is podcasting. Love that. What do you particularly love about this medium? Because there's a lot to love.
Well, there is. And also, I think there's a lot of time that's proven it works and that it will work in the future, right? There's so many platforms that have popped up and, they pop up for 6 months or 12 months and then die. And I don't want to build a brand on a platform that I'm not confident is going to be around. And if you look at it, well, heck, you've been around, a dozen years doing podcasts? They started 2004. You started shortly after that. When I started in 2015, people would ask, what's a podcast? And now they've really taken off.
Oh, yeah.
But I think what's so powerful about podcasts is that it's so easy to create and so easy to repurpose. So what is a podcast anymore, right? You can now add podcasts to Facebook. YouTube is becoming one of the best search engines for podcasts. Sirius XM, satellite radio, they bought some podcast networks because they wanted to use that up there. So the question becomes if we're having this conversation and somebody listens to it on Facebook, is that still a podcast? If they read the transcript or they see a clip of it on social media, I don't know if that's a podcast, but I know that they're consuming it. And to me, especially if you're doing more of a high value relationship B2B sales, I don't think a lot of the rules that we've been taught for transactional sales necessarily apply, right? Because people have to know, like, and trust you. And they're not going to do that from a 15-second interruption on Facebook. It takes that conversation. And I always say, on podcast interviews, there's really two goals: to have people turn you up or turn you off, right? Because your ideal customers will turn you up. Those people that don't resonate with you doesn't mean they're bad people, but I can tell you what, they're going to be bad customers for you.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. The podcasting thing, and like I said, so much to love about it. Interestingly enough, you talk about the future being rich audio and not outdated video. Now, you're probably being a bit provocative there, but to your question, which is what is a podcast anymore, just to answer that, I would say a podcast is audio on demand that you can listen to, I think, for free, but is available on a podcast platform, of which Facebook's not a podcast platform. So if you're just uploading audio to Facebook, I'm going to say that's not a podcast. But if you put a link to this episode on Facebook, yeah, it's a podcast. And anyway, it's sort of semantic. I think what you and I both agree on is that rich audio is where it's at. And I think for business owners, and that's who we're here to represent and inspire into getting on other people's podcasts, if not having their own. And as a podcast consumer on a daily basis, you can listen to it anywhere, anytime. You can't watch a video while you're driving, or mowing the lawn or at the gym. Podcast seems to be a lot more personable. I mean, we start to create these incredible relations with our listeners, which is, again, I don't have that with the video kind of stuff that I watch.
It's a more intimate, if you think about it, even reading a book, and I say that I read a book 1 to 2 a week. Truth is, I probably listen to 1 to 2 a week.
Yeah.
And it's different when you hear the spoken word, especially if it's the author that's reading it there. And it's interesting. You said, being a host or a guest. I don't think it's an either or. I really think it's based on what your goals are, right? So it's like Uber, right? Should you be a Uber driver or an Uber passenger? Well, it's the same platform, but different goals. So if your goal is to get out there in front of new audiences, get new leads, get new exposure, well, you're going to have to be a guest to do that. If your goal is to build your current audience, to nurture those current leads, being a host is a great way for that. But I wish I could take credit for that idea of rich audio. I actually heard that in a book that I was listening to by a futurist out of Stanford. Johansson is the gentleman's name, and it's the Leadership Literacies for the Future. And I was listening to this, Tim, and I listened sped up. I listen at 2x speed as I run at half x speed.
Yeah, right.
And it caused me to stop and rewind because he said the future is vivid audio. And I thought, I heard that wrong. Everybody, this was probably 18 months ago, was just talking, everything's video. And what he pointed out there was that video can become very dated. And it's also very discriminatory. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but when you see somebody, you make judgments, right? Oh, they don't have the same experience as I do. They're too young. They're too old. What they're saying doesn't apply. Whereas audio, you listen for the content. And let me give you an example of this. A few years ago, my niece was studying for her real estate exam, and she reached out to me and she goes, Uncle Tom, have you ever heard of Zig Ziglar? And I paused and I said, yes, honey, I have. And she said, oh, I've been listening to him and he's funny. He's got great stuff. And I couldn't help but, tell her, oh yeah, this is great stuff. But think that was probably recorded before she was born.
Yeah.
I didn't have the guts to tell her Zig passed away years ago. But if she would have seen the video of that, maybe with his big lapels and different hairdo, something like that, would she have really listened to that?
She'd be going, some old bloke, he's not relevant to what I'm about.
Exactly. So to me, that vivid audio really connects with people.
Yeah, that's
and it always has.
Yeah, and always will, I would suggest. Now, we're going to talk about getting business owners onto podcasts because that's what your business Interview Valet does, and it's something that I bang on about a lot. I bang on about it to the point, Tom, that I now share a number on this podcast. We call them mobile phones over here, Tom. You call them a cell phone, but it's 0480 015 150 is the hotline for this podcast. It is an opportunity for my listener to ring in, to ask a question, to share an insight, to share what marketing is working for them. And I always encourage them when they do that to leave their business name and website address for some exposure, because I know that them being on this podcast, something nice will happen. Someone will visit their website, someone will call them and say they heard them. And that's the power of podcasting. I am underwhelmed at how many people call that number. It's not enough. I always have a voicemail to share, but I don't get it. I'm just obviously not getting my message across clearly enough.
There's a couple things there. One is exposure brings opportunity, right? You never know where that next great customer, that great partner, where that's coming from. And typically it's not because they came through a funnel. It was usually this serendipity conversation. Somebody heard about it. Somebody was talking to them about that. So I think that's one of those things, is to always focus on that exposure brings opportunity. And the other one that was my really word for the year, and I know one conversation away, that's 3 words, but hey, we've had a hard year. I gave myself bonus words. And I just looked at that, and everything that has come great in my life has come through a conversation. Yeah. And I think the more we can do those, the more at scale, the more we can help people, but also we can help ourselves. And it's like, is that a great conversation to just call up, leave a question, leave a review, and have you promote it, share that with all of these people over time? Why wouldn't you do that?
100%. In terms of getting on podcasts, of course, people can use Interview Valet, Tom, and we'll talk about that later, but also just reach out. Honestly, us podcasters, and I'll talk on behalf of podcasters, not YouTubers or any other media. They can work it out themselves. But the same principles apply is, first of all, we need to fill space. As a podcaster, I put about an hour, 45 to an hour out of content each week. So I need content. The second part of that is, if you've got a story to tell, if you've got some news to break, if you've got something that would be of interest to my audience and going to make my audience better people for hearing it, then bloody contact me, because I am interested, And don't just contact me and say, I'm a plumber and my business is going pretty well. Would you interview me? No, I won't. But, give me a good reason. I don't need a 1,000-word email to convince me that you should come on my podcast. I'll get it pretty quickly. But again, reach out. Anything to add to that in terms of helping business owners get on podcasts, Tom?
There are two secrets, and you tell me if I'm right on these, because everybody will go, those aren't secrets. That's common sense. Well, it's true. The first one is there's 3 types of people that podcast hosts want to have on their shows. They're friends of friends, and people they want to be their friends, right? So if you've got an interesting story, put it out there. And Tim goes, wow, that's interesting. I've never heard of how a plumber could do that. I would like to get to know this person. Nowhere in there does it say a creepy pitch. Mm-hmm. And I always think of Gary Vaynerchuk, right? What's the book he wrote?
Jab, jab,
jab, jab, jab, jab, right hook. I probably missed a couple jabs, right? I look at it as give, ask.
Correct.
Right? So if you want to be on the show, well, give them your time to listen to the show to make sure it's a good fit. Then give them a rating and review. Hosts listen to that. They look at that.
Yeah.
Follow them on social media. Make a comment. Share something there. Build that relationship, and then reach out and say, I've listened to the show. I think I could add value this way, right? You're still giving. Mm-hmm. If you do that, they will ask you to be on the show, right? Because your number one goal when you go onto a show is not to sell your ware or do anything like that. Your number one goal is to make the host look like a genius for inviting you on, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Because if you do that, they will promote you more than you ever could.
Make
right?
the host,
so you want to give that value.
Make the host famous would be the way I would summarize it. And that doesn't mean, say to the host how good they are. That is, be an incredible guest to the point that the listeners are going, oh my God, that host of that podcast just had that guest on who just gave us the most valuable information for our business ever. And, if I, as the host, can be the conduit for that, then I am a very, very happy man.
How many times have I gotten gold dripping from the ceilings as you talk about it?
Go.
Right? What you're talking to someone. I don't always remember their name, right? But the consistent thing there is the host.
Yeah.
And so when I know, I was listening to, I think there was one, Shuffler. It's like, I really need that to manage my presentations and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I couldn't remember the host name or the guest name, but I can remember where I heard it. And that brought me back to your website. So awesome. You get credit for introducing me. It's like, you think about it. Everybody knows who introduced them to their spouse, and they'll be forever, thankful for that. And that's what a podcast is doing, introducing you to new ideas and new people.
Yeah, 100%. So I think just to wrap that point up, don't be shy. Have something to tell her. I'm going to go back a step. Get on podcasts. As a business owner, set yourself a goal to be interviewed on 4 podcasts in 2022. That would seem to me to be a reasonable goal. Once you've done 2 or 3, you'll get a taste for it and want more. Add value. Be the best guest you could possibly be. You're not there to talk about yourself. You're there to make the audience that little bit smarter, happier, informed, whatever it may be, and go for it. Tom, if they do that, and you and I can both bounce some ideas here, but what does a business owner need to do once they get accepted as a guest on a future podcast episode?
And one of the great things is just being a guest, right? You want to show up prepared. Just the same way if Tim invites you to speak on his stage and it's a physical stage, you'd make sure you were there on time, looking good, prepared. You know what you were talking about. And it's the same thing. I think sometimes with podcasts, we think, I've been on so many Zoom calls. I can do these in my sleep. Well, no, you're talking to an audience. So make sure just like being a guest at someone's home. Show up on time. Be grateful for it. If they ask for certain things, like a microphone and headphones, you that's like the bare minimum.
Be a good start.
You're going to sound great. You should sound and show up great too. So that sort of thing. And also make sure you're familiar with what the show is all about. Have a plan as you go in there. The other thing too is I would say at the end of the day, no one just wants to be on a podcast interview. Well, maybe the first couple are an ego thing, but at the end of the day, this is marketing, right? If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense.
Yep.
You know, what is it? It's small business, but big marketing. So how can you do that? How can you measure that? What are your goals? And, you know, this is heresy in digital marketing, but we've been testing this out since 2015. HubSpot's a client. They've looked at the data, and what they have seen, and we've seen, is that when you're in a podcast interview, give people 3 ways to say yes, to move them from being a passive listener to an active visitor to an engaged lead. So don't just wait till the end of the podcast and go, come back and sign up for my newsletter, right? No, just give them a small yes. It's something to get them back there. It could be a checklist, an assessment, something that's a quick win for them.
100%.
You know, the medium yes could be something that's more, it's going to take a little bit more time or some more money. It could be a product. It could be a book. It could be a video. And then that heck yes, right? If somebody's listened to you for 30 or 45 minutes and they want to engage, you know, whales don't click and big fish don't swim through funnels. Don't slow them down in a funnel. You know, let them talk to the wizard.
Yeah. So just to be clear there, in fact, what you spoke about then applies equally to the host as it does to the guest. But you're saying if the guest, the business owner gets on a podcast, have a call to action. You know, my view would be to the guest, listen, you're going to go on someone's podcast. You're going to excite the audience into something that they're going to like you. They're going to want more of you. So give them the opportunity to get more of you. And as you say, whether it be a landing page on your website or a 15 free-minute consultation or whatever it is, you've got to go in with that attitude of, I'm going to be good here. People are going to want more of me, not egotistically, but, you know, here's how they can get it. Because otherwise you're creating art without a call to action.
I view it as chumming water.
Chumming water.
I grew up chumming the water. Remember Jaws? I'm old enough to remember.
Oh, hang on, mate. I'm an ocean swimmer. I don't do shark stories. Can I just go and get a coffee? Go on.
And I was going to say, you got more sharks than we do. But I look at it as if somebody just goes on a podcast interview and doesn't put those call to actions at the end, right? Give people a next step. It's just like you're chumming the water, right? You're attracting everybody. You're getting them excited. And then there's no next step. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help them. You know, give them a way that, you know, not everybody will be a customer, but if somebody wants to be, make it easy for them. If somebody just wants information to share with someone else, you know, if somebody just wants a free copy of your book, you know, give them a free copy of your book.
Yeah, 100%. Tom, you started interviewvalet.com quite a few years ago now. You've got a very, very large crystal ball, as do I, to think that podcasting, you know, would finally hit its straps. So well done to you. Give us a little bit of insight into where Interview Valet is today.
Yeah, well, where we started was
10 years ago,
follow-on. 2014, I started playing around with the idea. Okay. So what's that, about 8 years now? My previous company was one of HubSpot's first e-commerce case studies, right? Using inbound marketing. And right around 2014, one of the things I noticed, I had sold that company, was in a sabbatical phase, helping some people with digital marketing. And what I realized is that, you know, blogs weren't working nearly as well. And I looked back and said, well, how did we do it 15, 20 years ago? We'd always do guest blogs, right? Instead of putting it on a my site with 3 people, I'll put it on a site there. So I started to say, could you do that on podcast interviews? So we tested it. The conversion rates we were seeing, Tim, were amazing. And at first I taught it. It was like a cheesy PDF. And then somebody's like, you should do a course. I never took that course out of beta. I killed it after 90 days because the people that actually were taking it, I'd see that they weren't getting results with it. And the ones that were really honest were the ones that said, you know, I don't want to learn how to do all this. let me be the guest. You take care of the rest. And I'm like, oh, that's a good tagline. So some of them asked, could you do a done for you service? We started that in 2015. First 3 years, I thought, man, we are way, way too early, right? I'd give my elevator pitch and somebody would go, what's a podcast?
Yeah.
But it gave us this chance to build a database, to build the systems, the processes. And then right around 2018, it really started to take off. And now we've grown to a team of 35 people in North America and Europe.
Yep.
We serve about 175 clients at a time, a lot of authors, coaches, consultants, and brands. And it's really great because, our whole mission is to personally introduce inspiring thought leaders to millions of people they could serve for the betterment.
So the business model for Interview Valet is that the guest pays you to get on a podcast that is 100% tailored to their prospects, to their audience.
Correct. It's a double-sided marketplace. So we've got the guest comes to us and, they pay us. So we've got the responsibility to them, but we also have to have the relationship with the podcast host.
No doubt.
And everything we do for the host is free. It makes it easy for them to say yes to an Interview Valet guest.
Well, everyone to listen to this, if you don't want to go through the processes that Tom and I have talked about, which you can do it yourself. But if you get to a point where you see appearing on podcasts as being a fundamental part of your marketing strategy, then hitting someone like Tom up, interviewvalet.com. I assume you represent Aussie business owners as well, Tom. Please tell me you do.
We do. And, if somebody wants to even get a free copy of my book, I'll put that back on that welcome page, interviewvalet.com/SB.
Oh, well, you know what we can do? I'll make it even easier. If you want to do an exclusive link, interviewvalet.com/Timbo, because I generally do that.
Timbo, perfect.
Yeah. Make it easy. And people can go there and get a free copy of your book, which is that one conversation away? Is that the book you're talking about, Tom, or is it the...
It's Podcast Guest Profits. One conversation away is releasing at the beginning of the year. So depending when you listen to this, you may get both books, but I wrote 2 books, Podcast Guest Profits, How to Grow Your Business with a Targeted Interview Strategy. That's more this is the manual. This is exactly how we do it. This is how you can do it yourself. And one conversation really away is really the why you do it.
I love that.
Simon Sinek said, start with why, and that's sort of my manifesto.
Yeah, I love it, mate. And if I could dissect your marketing for a minute for those listening, what Tom has done has been incredibly, incredibly helpful by doing something like that. And it always pays off in spades, doesn't it, Tom? We think we're going to give away, that book that you get. If people go to interviewvalet.com/Timbo, they get a free copy of the manual, as you call it. It will show them exactly how to do what you do in a paid circumstance. And sometimes people get scared about that. Oh, I'm giving away my IP if I, give away a book with all that in it. But actually, you know what? It'll probably mean a lot of people want to work with you because you know what you're doing.
And for the people that want to do it themselves,
Go
that
for
would be
it.
our clients anyway.
That's right.
Right? Our clients are the ones that value their time. And there's so many of them that, the book is only 120 pages. They get halfway through it and go, do I have to do all of this stuff? And I'm like, well, that's the recipe, right? I know if you do that, you'll get results, right? It's like any other recipe. Ish doesn't work. And they just come to us and say, let me be the guest. You take care of the rest.
100%. Hey, Tom Schwab, great stuff. Lovely to talk, one podcaster to another. And thank you for what you're doing to our industry, for our industry, and may it continue well into the future.
Thank you, Tim.
Well, there you go, team. Interview Valet's Tom Schwab. You convinced yet? Are you going to make it a 2022 kind of goal to get at least one interview on one relevant podcast? If you are, I'd really encourage you to grab a free copy of Tom's book over at interviewvalet.com/Timbo. It is a beauty. Here's my top 3 attention grabbers from that chat with Tom. Attention grabber number 1. I 100% agree with Tom that obscurity is many small businesses' greatest marketing challenge. And one way to fix that is start getting interviewed on podcasts that have the attention of those you'd love as your customers. Just do it. Attention grabber number 2. I love how Tom said exposure brings opportunity. I'll build on that by saying being helpful when getting exposure builds even more opportunity. That's the entire premise of my marketing book, The Boomerang Effect. Be helpful, add value, contribute to people's buying process by giving them quality, helpful information and not sell, sell, sell. Instead, tell, tell, tell. Hey, you like that? Attention grabber number 3. I love Tom's philosophy that you're just one conversation away from something amazing. So go and get yourself some podcast exposure. Now, I wish I could say just like listener such and such did by calling the Small Business Big Marketing hotline on 0480 015 150, but I can't. Because no one did. That's the worst crying impersonation I've ever heard, but I am a little sad. Never mind. Now, in the spirit of this episode and with the new year fast approaching, I'm starting to plan guests for next year. If there's a business founder you'd love to hear from or a business that fascinates you, let me know by joining the Small Business Big Marketing Tribe on Facebook. You can contact me there, communicate with me there. You can also share the space with 1,800 business owners who love talking about marketing. It's free and it's worthwhile, and I'd love you to be in there. If you're ready to create some helpful marketing, remember, lead with value, as Tom said. Then grab a copy of my book, The Boomerang Effect, over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com. If you are absolutely loving this podcast, then you'll find 581 more episodes on your favourite podcast app. And as has been the case for the past 12 years, it's been me, Tim Reid, working hard to keep this dream alive for you and me. The Musically Bits, is that right? The Musically Bits? I'll go with that. The Musically Bits and Bobs you hear were smashed together by Pink Floyd's Roger Waters keyboard player in Lockie Dolly, I love saying that, then coerced together by producer Romy Sher. Thanks, Rom. Until next time, thank you so much for tuning in. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.